Hello, Abnormal Investigations. I got another drop for you on this Sunday morning. I hope you all enjoy this one. I think it's a pretty good one. I was 15 years old in June of 1990 when my parents split up and soon after divorced. At that time, we lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where my father was stationed at Fort Collins. We were a military family and an outdoorsy family, as it was, or at least my father and I were. My mother and older sister, not so much. I loved camping, hiking, fishing, and horseback riding. So when my parents split up and my mother took my sister to Price, Utah to live with our grandmother, it was a bit of a change for me, not to mention a culture shock. We moved there in November of 1990. So in January of 1991, my birth month, I just wanted to get outside and camp and hike, and as an 11-year-old kid, well, I felt 11 anyways, even though I was 16, who was very hurt and angry about all these things and these changes that no one seemed to care how it made me feel. I begged and pleaded and threw tantrums. I was new to the desert setting, and I guess I was more than curious. I wanted to explore. At this time, my mother said and had started dating this man. They had been dating about 2 months in February. When he told me my mother would be glad to take us camping, he told me he understood why I was so angry and wanted me to be happy. Sounds great, right? So at the end of February, he took my sister, who was 5 years older than me, myself, and my mother out to the San Rafael Desert in southern Utah to camp for 2 nights. I was so excited. Right before we were to leave, my mother's work called and told her she would have to work Saturday, even though she had requested the weekend. But low man on the totem pole and all, the choice wasn't hers. It was either come into work or don't come back. We left Friday to go to the desert, and on Saturday morning after breakfast my mother left for work and took my older sister, who had her learner's permit and was wanting to get more driving practice in. That left me alone with the boyfriend. At first it was fine. We hiked up a mesa to a cave where he showed me so very cool Native American cave paintings. Showed me how to look for arrowheads and flint, and all in all was telling me all about the Navajo people who had inhabited the areas. I was fascinated. Then, like a cloud passing over the sun, his mood darkened, very, very quickly. To this day, I don't know if this was something I had done or if it was just because of me. He started to tell me I was not a good child, that I was a brat who didn't deserve his kindness and knowledge. He told me my mother deserved better and better, and that she deserved a better daughter. He told me everyone would be better if I would just walk off into the desert and disappear. He told me my mother felt the same, and that's why she agreed to go out to the desert camp. Well, they had planned to get rid of me. She hated camping, I knew that, so what he was saying was kind of making sense to me, you know. Now, just in case you're not aware of the desert weather in Utah in the winter, it can be a very beautiful day in the 70s just to drop below freezing at night. So on this day, it was so nice I wasn't wearing a coat, just jeans and a t-shirt. Okay, back to that day. He told me I should run so he wouldn't have to hurt me. He then started loading what I believe was his .38 pistol. I was young and not as knowledgeable as I am now with firearms. So I did what any kid would do. I ran. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. I was just crying and running and very scared. I have no idea how long I ran or how far. All I know is I needed to get away and out of sight, which is what I did. So when I finally felt safe enough to stop running, then I couldn't see the camp or smoke from the fire, I started to look for somewhere to hide. I found another cave and sat inside of it for a good bit of time. Not sure how much time elapsed, but I knew I could not stay there. He would find me, I thought, and then that would be it. That would be the end. I thought I had no one, so I needed to find someone, but how and where? How would I find somebody out here? I remembered my father teaching me that if you are ever lost in the mountains, to find a river if possible and follow it downstream. And that would most likely lead you to a town, city, civilization, or some sort. So that's what I did. I found out later that week that in the desert you are supposed to go upstream, not down. I still don't know if that's true, but that's what they told me then. So I remembered from our drive in the previous day there was a river somewhere nearby, so I went off to find it. And I did finally find it. Then I proceeded to follow it downstream, walking somewhat blindly while lost in thought and about my mom not wanting me and how I should have never begged to go out there. This was all my fault, and I was probably going to die out here, and that it was all my fault. Why was I such a brat? So the sun was starting to go down. If I were to throw out a guess, it was probably around 4:30ish, maybe 5 by now. I had been walking since about 10 a.m. The temp was starting to drop, and I started to cry again. Yeah, I cried. I was scared. I wasn't paying attention, and I tripped and fell into this small river. Great, now I'm alone, scared and wet. I was going to die out there. I just knew it. So the shock of the water snapped my brain into thinking, and I realized I needed shelter. I have, at this time, no idea if there are predators here, and if so, what kind. Bears, wolves, snakes, scorpions? I had no idea. I didn't want to die. I wanted to tell my mom I was sorry and please let me come home. I would never make her do this again, and I would be a good girl. I didn't want to die. I found another small cave, not bigger than the one that I found. And it was hardly any bigger than a coat closet. Well, maybe not a cave, but maybe more of a small alcove that offered me coverage. And I curled up into a ball under the t-shirt and tried to calm myself. I was so cold and the temperatures was steadily dropping. If I remember correctly, it got down to 38 that night. Not below freezing, but at the time I felt like it was being wet. Yeah, then the howling and the yips started. They told me it was coyotes, and maybe it was me and scared and overacting, brain freaked, but something. But to this day I have never seen coyotes that big, nor have I seen them walk upright. There were several of them, maybe 5. But they were moving around me so quickly in the darkness, and it was so dark. The only light was from the moon, and it was not illuminating a lot. I look back now, and I'm glad it wasn't. These things seemed to just circle me throughout the night, almost like they were curious or maybe just messing with me. They did get close enough for me to see that they looked like really big, scary dogs, but they didn't seem to be threatening me, if that makes any sense. Though at the time I didn't care what they wanted. They needed to go away, or I figured they would kill me, and make it quick. At least I hoped it would be quick. Sadly enough, I thought this to be more preferable than freezing to death or starving to death. I had already resigned myself to one or the other. Now this. I have no idea how I fell asleep or how I passed out from fright, but I woke up and it was very early dawn. That in between time, similar to twilight, I was alone again. My legs were numb and it was hard to walk. I would get strange shooting pains through the numbness every time I took a step. I was hungry and thirsty, and I wanted my mom, even though I didn't think she wanted me. I started crying again and telling myself out loud that it was my fault, and I did this to myself when I seen it. It looked like a large dog or a wolf. It was staring, and it was looking at me from the top of the ridge. It yipped at me, then it ran the other direction. I stared at it dumbly, unsure what to do next. Would it eat me? Would it leave me alone? What do I do? Then there it was again, or at least I think it was the same one, but this one was now at the bottom of the ridge, maybe a football field away from me. And it too yipped at me, but this time it didn't run away. It turned around and walked away from me slowly. And it kept walking slowly, looking back at me like it wanted me to follow it. So me having nothing else to do with my day, at this point I couldn't see it getting much worse. I followed it for maybe an hour, maybe longer. The sun had come up completely when I finally stopped and turned around and started to look at it and noticed it was staring at me for what seemed like forever, until the nose of the engine could be heard, and then just like it took off and the truck came into view. It was a state park ranger out looking for me. I have never been so happy. I started to attempt to jump up and down, but I failed due to my legs being weak and my feet. He jumped out of his truck, scooped me up, and placed me in the passenger seat, where he radioed in that I'd been found, gave me a Snickers and a Coke, and boy, I tell you, to this day it was the best Snickers I'd ever had and Coke. I found out I had severe hypothermia and frostbite of 90% of both of my feet. They wanted to take a few of my toes off, and I'm glad my mother didn't allow it, though to this day I have nerve damage in all of them. And if my feet get cold, the pain is still excruciating to this day. I also found out my mother didn't want me left out there. He wanted my mom to himself, and I was in the way. To my knowledge, they never found him. He left the desert that day, called my mom at work to tell her that I was gone and she was free. Apparently, upon listening to her response, realized he made a mistake, so he ran. They told me I must have been hallucinating the big dog coyote wolf due to the hypothermia, but I know better. I know what I saw. And sometimes I even think, maybe her boyfriend didn't run away. Maybe these creatures seen what he done to me, and maybe that's why they didn't eat me that night. Maybe they were full. That's a very interesting story. I would say it's very possible that they did eat him that night. They probably figured that he was evil. They could get away with it. He was older, he wasn't a child, and the search probably wouldn't be as much for him. I don't know. But that is a unique story. I've never heard one like that, and I thank you for sharing it with me. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And until next time, guys, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner, and the boots on the ground will be coming soon.